Welcome to Gray Maybe, a limited series podcast and social experiment based on this season's topic, grief. My name is Julie Schmid. I'm a professional dancer, actor, teacher, author, artist, and cat lover. Through my own personal journey of recovery, I found that things aren't just black or white, or a simple yes or no. For me, in my recovery, there has been mostly gray area and a lot of maybes. In most of my stories, you can find the gray maybe. I'll be sharing my own process through personal stories and interviews with others in an effort to help investigate the process of and recovery through grief. If you'd like to share your story, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com. graymaybestories@gmail.com. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe on whichever platform you're using to catch future episodes of Gray Maybe. A note before we start. My stories and the stories of others on this podcast are told through the lens of our own experience. The revelation of our process is ours to tell. If you disagree with the views or stories on this podcast, know that we are not speaking on anything other than our own experiences and viewpoints. Take what you like and leave the rest. Nothing expressed or mentioned in this podcast is an endorsement or is meant to be taken as advice. It is strictly the sharing of our own experiences and recovery. Any feelings this podcast activates in the listener is for the listener to process and recover from. Any criticism you have based on these experiences and choices are yours, and they are not anyone else's burden to carry. Trigger warning: death, brain cancer, sudden death. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Gray Maybe today. If you are an avid listener, know that I appreciate you. If you are tuning in for the first time, I'm so glad you stopped by. Consider listening to other episodes and looking up, other previous seasons of Gray Maybe. Today, I have someone on the pod who I like very much, and I am going to go ahead and say that this person, everybody likes. Everybody always says, "Oh, not everyone's going to like you." But for this for this particular person, that is actually not true. Everybody does like her, and I know it because I would have heard something by now or been able to tell if somebody didn't like her. And if you know this person, you know what I'm saying is true. Today, my guest, her name is Julie Schmid. I'm Jillian Schmitz. She's Julie Schmid. Don't get it twisted. And I know her because we did the China Job together, choreographed by Keith and Sharon Young, and assisted by Dominique Kelly. And we spent a good time and chunk of time in China together. I had a very interesting experience. I've talked about that before a bit here and there. I had Chelsea on the pod in season 2 that Julie Schmid. And Julie and I are both from Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
We both have family caramel recipes. Hers is a bit more famous than mine. Mine we just keep in the family. Hers, I think they've actually made some monetary value out of. And so we just have a lot of weird little cute things in common. But Julie Schmid is a dancer. She's an I've seen her do acting work. I've worked with her. I'm a fan of Julie Schmid. And so she's on the pod today. And so Julie, will you just give a little intro if I missed anything? Don't go against what I said. I know
I want to.
Everybody likes you. Yeah, you're not gonna though, because what I said is true. So Julie, if there's anything you want to add to the intro.
I am very humbled by that intro. Thank you. But I am such a fan of yours, so the feeling is mutual.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I do know that I am not everyone's cup of tea. So I'm very clear with where I'm at.
That's fair.
But Julie Schmid, I don't know anybody who doesn't like Julie Schmid. In fact, if you ask someone, Do you know Julie Schmid? Everyone's like, oh my God, I love Julie Schmid. Okay.
I'm blushing.
So Julie's good. And if you're watching, if we can get our cams to work, because we had a little bit of problem, we'll get our cams to work, and you see this on the YouTube or the socials, you'll see her blush a little bit.
Yeah, totally. It's
So
funny.
yes, this season is like the worst season. It's like I like, oh, great idea. Let's do a season on the saddest thing. Like let's do that'll be something great. Like I I don't do apparently uplifting topics for seasons. I do the nitty gritty, which is weird because it's things people don't want to talk about and probably don't want to listen to. Which is a weird thing to do for a podcast host is choose things that nobody wants to listen to or talk about. I'm hoping that somehow that still works out for me, but this season is on grief, and there's so many different components to grief. There's so many different types of grief,
Hmm.
and I feel like as a society, and I've probably have said this many times over in all of the episodes of the season, I don't think we as a community know how to grieve,
Hmm.
help each other grieve, uh, like make it a normal part of life thing. Like it is like this thing to avoid at all costs when it's kind of inevitable on some level or all
Hmm.
levels. So, with that being said, you know, Julie has a story that I think quite a few people who know you, who are around you, do know about. And I would love if you want to share a little bit about your experience through grief. I know you had two losses kind of close ish together.
Yeah.
So that was like also because I was watching it from afar and I was just like, oh my God, I can't handle it. And I'm not you. And so, and I'm like, no more. No, no,
Let's
this is
press
not cool.
pause.
And so, yes, a big long pause. And so, anything you want to talk about, and I'm gonna really yield to you as much as I'm jabbering now. I'll yield to you about anything you want to talk about. I have my little questions. I have my little things, but like we don't have to hit all the bullet points. And like if you don't want to go into the deep of like anything deep, don't do it. Talk about like I think all of it is valuable.
Totally.
I think all about anything you want to say about it. If you want to start with like your experience, feel free. If there's something else that you want to jump around to, you got the questions ahead of time. You got a cheat sheet so you can highlight whatever you want.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I actually disagree with you that people don't want to talk about or listen to topics about grief because I have found it very valuable and I've sought that
Oh,
out.
good.
And I think
Oh,
anybody who
amazing.
has gone through like a major loss, it can feel isolating sometimes. So then when you hear other people talk about it, there's so many, things that it's like, "Oh my god, I felt that way too," or
Mhm.
"Oh, that's interesting, like, that you looked at it from that perspective," or whatever. So, I think it's great that you're doing this.
Oh, good. Thank you. And for nothing else because everybody likes you, they're going to listen to this episode. This
We'll see.
episode will get hits.
I feel
Yeah.
like you're setting the
Yeah,
bar
yeah.
very high and,
No, no, no,
you
no,
know
no. No, no, no. You got more than enough people that listen. Yeah, I know. It'll be good.
No, that was one
So
of the
tell Oh, sorry,
oh,
do
no,
it. Go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say that, Jason, so my late husband, which we will be talking about, that was, like,
Mhm.
always one of his things. Because I can be like, "Oh my god, it's so good," or this or that, and he'd be like, "You need to, like, lower the bar a little bit because you're making the expectation far too high." So, I think there's a little bit of him and me being like, "Ooh."
I love that. I love that Jason said that because I had to change how I have also overinflated expectations. And so I had to start setting what I would say bars so low I could step over them. Like I had to be able to like in my mind see a bar so low that I could step over because I'm I'll spin it all the way up into something that is just absolutely not even possible. So we have that in common as well.
Totally.
So tell me about Jason. I met
You
Jason. I got
did.
to meet
You
Jason.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason came to China, for a
Yeah.
week. It was actually over his 30th birthday, and, I mean, honestly, I don't even know how he made it there, like, he flew by himself, like, with not being able to walk super well, like, no cell phone communication, like, thank God, he survived, but, yeah, I mean, Jason's one of my favorite people. Um,
Mhm.
He was my husband. We met in college, fell in love. I moved out to LA to dance. He started law school in Wisconsin. We did a long distance relationship. And then finally, he moved out to LA, and it was supposed to be now everything is great and we start our life together. And he was very quickly diagnosed with brain cancer, which was misdiagnosed for like 6 months as vertigo. He was having like headaches and dizziness, and I mean,
Mm,
it was classic vertigo symptoms, but at a certain point, it's like something is wrong.
mhm.
I do have to give him a shout out though. He passed the California bar exam with a brain tumor. And anybody who knows
I
anything
mean,
about bar exams, they're really hard. California is one of the hardest,
yes,
and a lot of people have to take
yes.
it multiple times. So I do have to like toot his horn
Holy
on that.
moly.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so he was 27 years old, I was 25. We weren't married at the time. Like we were just thrown into this. I mean, literally, he got an MRI. He was in the ER that night. He was in surgery the next day with the brain
Holy
tumor the
cow.
size of a lemon. And that was the beginning of our journey of nearly 10 years of, you know, chemo, radiation, surgeries, doctor's visits, ups and downs. There's not technically like a remission on brain cancer, but there's like,
Mhm.
cancer free or no visible
Right,
disease, status.
right, right.
So yeah, it was just a roller coaster until finally it all came to a head. Actually, the beginning of the pandemic was when um, you know things got really bad and we were running out of options. And he did one final surgery, and then you start to know that like time is running out. At the
Mhm.
beginning, like it's like, okay, so you have a brain tumor and you're going to do all the things, and if this thing doesn't work, well, we can try this other thing. and
Right.
and then your doctor starts to be like, okay, well, we have one more thing in the bag, and then it starts to be like,
Mhm.
how's your quality of life? And that's when you kind of
Right.
know, like, okay,
Yeah.
we might have to start facing like the reality of
Mhm.
you know this being terminal. um
Mhm.
so yeah, he passed away on May 25th of 2020. um And thank God I was able to be there because it was COVID, and so he was in
Right.
the hospital for, almost a month without me by his side. And
Mm.
it, they would let me come in, the nurses would like sneak me in
Mhm.
or whatever. But,
Mhm.
throughout his whole diagnosis and our whole journey together, it was like we always were there as a team. Like I slept in the
Mhm.
hospital with him, like we were there, and it felt like if we were together, we could conquer anything.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I think that was like one of the hardest parts, was like for both of us, like being separated and not physically being there. And yeah, anyways, yeah, he
That no,
yeah,
continue.
no, I start this is what happens when I start talking. I start talking and then I forget what the point of everything was because I just
No,
go
this
down
is
these
it's
rabbit
not that
holes.
it no, I was only going to interject and say that, just to refresh everyone's memory because I think we're all a little kooky after
Mhm.
whatever your pandemic experience was. Everybody had a different pandemic experience. Nobody's was good. Some people's was way worse,
Sure.
but nobody had a great pandemic experience. Now, we all make jokes like, "Oh man, I'd love to have that 2 weeks off again. Yeah, get that government money.
Totally.
Ah, the good
Right.
old days, right?" Right, but that's us looking now, but and also nobody was having a good time.
Totally.
It was just how bad of a time were you having?
Sure.
And that point in there, like I can't like the torture of just that timing of that
Yeah.
on top of everything, I I just it seems so intolerable. Like because this wasn't like March. March, everyone was kind of like, "Oh, did you hear? Oh, yeah, it's kind of weird.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, see you in 2 weeks."
Totally.
April was like, "Hmm, this seems like
Yeah.
maybe we should take this seriously.
Yeah.
This seems a little rough. I'm gonna start wearing a hazmat suit." And then May was like, "Oh fuck."
Hmm.
Oh, we're fucked.
Yeah,
Like everyone's fucked. Everything is fucked. So like what a rough what a rough timing aspect of all of that too.
totally. Yeah, I mean, he went in when he went in for his last surgery, and we were on the fence of like, are we still doing surgery? Because this was his sixth craniotomy, and at
Ugh.
this point, like in the past, like so just so people kind of understand, like he had two surgeries back to back at the end of 2010, and
Mhm.
that um cleared out a lot of the tumor, and he was cancer free. He also did radiation and chemo. He had some disabilities because of it, like his speech was slower. The tumor was on his cerebellum,
Right.
so thank God, like it didn't affect his personality. Like Jason was always
Mhm.
Jason up until like his
Yeah.
last moment on this earth. And I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for that. But, he was more like wobbly, like he walked slower, he talked slower, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff.
Mhm.
He was cancer free for 5 years, then it came back, but still in the cerebellum. Um, did surgery again, a little more radiation, more chemo, and then it was like 2018 it came back and then it came back again, so it's like the time starts getting shorter in between recurrences.
I see.
And so this last recurrence, not only did it come back in the cerebellum, but now it had spread a little bit to like his frontal lobe and
Mm.
another little area of his cerebellum. And so we opted to do one last surgery just to sort of buy as much time as we could. At this point we knew like there we like it's spreading, it's
Mhm.
the time, the clock is ticking. So then
Mhm.
it's just like buying time and like how much time can we have with each other and for him to have on this earth. And so opted to do the surgery. I got out of the hospital like super quick. It was like in and out brain surgery. Because
Mm.
again, April 2020, nobody wants to be in a hospital.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I guess both of us were just like, okay, well, we got out of the hospital. So, like, whatever's going to
Mhm.
happen, like, we're together, we're at home. And then he went to the hospital because he got pneumonia. And like, we thought it was just gonna be like an in and out thing. And that's when it just progressively got worse. Um,
Mm.
but I was able to be there when he passed. His family was able to come in. My family was able to come in and have like some final moments. And his actual passing was very beautiful.
Mm.
He had been taken off life support, and the doctors were like, "It's probably gonna happen really soon," and then he just like kept breathing on his own. And it was such like
Mhm.
Jason, so he's sort of like he's stubborn, and he doesn't like to do things on other people's terms, and so it was very much like a oh really kind of a moment.
Yeah, he had a very dry sense of humor
Yeah.
and like very witty but very dry and like very cunning. He could concisively I remember him summing up a moment in like a sentence in a way that you're just
Yes.
like, "Did you just hear what he said? That's really fucking funny."
Yeah.
Like and it's just slide it in there in a way
Totally.
that's like, "What did you just say?"
Yeah, like
Like that is
out
funny.
of nowhere. So it just really,
Yes.
it felt like he at least got to go out on his terms.
Yeah.
And I was there when it happened. I had gotten up from the bed and he knew that I was okay. Like he knew his parents were on the way. I had been laughing about something and told him about it and like it very
Mhm.
much felt like he was like, "Okay, I'm going to just
Mhm.
sneak out," you know.
Right.
Um
Right. Right.
but it's such a weird thing in general, death, because
Mhm.
someone is
Mhm.
there and then they're not,
Yes.
and with him, I saw it happen. But then a year later, I lost my mom very unexpectedly. She fell down the stairs. It was like a freak accident. I got a call
Oh
at
my
3
god.
a.m., with my sister hysterically crying and just being like, "Mom's dead," and I like that's like
And you're
burned
like,
into my
"What?"
head. And it's just like, no, no, no. Like,
Yeah.
and so it was like with that situation, it's like somebody just disappeared out of thin air. And like,
Mhm.
with Jason, it's like I saw him, I saw it happen. I could like wrap my head around it. You know, I feel like we were grieving the loss of so many other things throughout our whole experience with it, that
Mhm.
not that it makes it easier to grieve, but it's different,
Mhm.
whereas
Yeah.
when somebody just like disappears.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I think there's like there's like this anticipatory grief
Mhm.
of like when you know someone's sick or something, is kind of long term.
Yeah.
Um, or if you're just highly anxious like myself and you anticipate grief every single
Sure.
thing all the time of like, oh, a pet, yeah, I'll do that. Oh, you know, I can anticipatory grief. I can anticipate grief for everything at any time,
Yeah.
all times of the day. Like just really, really probably unhealthy. So that there's like that anticipatory grief, which my dad passed in April,
Mhm.
and he had been diagnosed, and I'll probably tell this story many times over on all the episodes of the season, but um, he was diagnosed in 2019 with supranuclear palsy,
Okay.
progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP. It it is it's a brain thing.
Mhm.
It's kind of like a similar issue that Alzheimer's patients have, where this buildup of tau protein in the brain is not able to be expelled out of the body normally.
Mhm.
And so but instead of it being like, oh, they don't know who you are or where they are aware, their body starts breaking down.
Mm.
And so it affects their ocular nerves. That's why they fall. It affects their gait. It
Mhm.
affects their swallowing, their capacity to
Mhm.
swallow, which is what eventually a lot of them end up passing from
Yeah.
is the inability to swallow, right?
Yeah.
Or um uh what's it called? When you basically choke.
I
When you
should know
basic
this because that was one of Jason's issues as well. And
Yeah.
like part of how he got
I
pneumonia was like he couldn't, like
Yes.
he was swallowing
Expel the cough
incorrectly.
or
Like
yeah.
he was like swallowing.
Aspirated.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Jeez.
Oh my God, we both, and anyone who's listening is like
Yeah,
aspiration.
yeah.
Like I've said it a million times. In this moment, I can't remember.
Yes.
Um, that's what grief does to you, by the
Mhm.
way. It just knocks out parts of your
Totally.
memory. Just gone. So he, once he had that diagnosis, and my dad was like not the healthiest of guy,
Sure.
growing up. So I kind of always grew up having kind of anticipatory grief
Interesting.
for him that he was going to pass earlier than other people's
Mhm.
dads or earlier than he could have passed. And he didn't. He actually got he was like 75, 70, 74, 75, which is like way older than I ever thought he would get. Like
Really?
my dad had his first stroke when I was in my early
Oh,
20s.
okay.
And he had a big stroke in my early 20s and didn't need surgery, or kind of like made a quote unquote full recovery. But he has probably since had several strokes that people didn't know about since,
Mhm.
which is also like they think PSP is very largely not researched, but yet because it's just pretty rare and they don't know enough about it. But there is a bit of research that suggests that people who have had several strokes may go on to have something like this. So, nonetheless, my dad passed in April and I had this anticipatory grief. I watched him
Mhm.
get more and more frail. I watched his system shut down. I was, you know, I got to slow walk that
Yeah.
process, which I think a lot of people who have had a loved one suffer from cancer,
Mhm.
suffer from, a debilitating illness or a terminal illness, they've watched that thing happen. Um, and it's also just naturally happens as people around us get older. We do
Sure.
see like that deterioration. But then there is also that shock grief that you're talking about with your mom that is just like no
It
you get blindsided.
totally.
Blindsided.
Yeah, just like
And I don't
slaps you in
know
the
which one
face.
is worse. I
There
don't know
it's
which one is
honestly,
worse.
it's apples to oranges. Like, like it's not a grief
But I like
competition.
oranges better.
Well, it depends on the season, right?
Okay.
Although they're kind of summer
Like I
seasons.
don't yeah, they're both like just terrible,
Yeah,
like for different reasons.
totally. With with Jason, it's we had to grieve so many different like micro losses along the way. Like you grieve sort of, him, just the loss of like his physicality that he used to have, and then we always wanted to have kids and stuff, and we got to a place where like, well, that's off the table for us, and so you kind of
Mhm.
like you grieve that, but you reimagine your future in a different way, and
Mhm.
so it's just like, and then losing him, as a younger person, like in my early 30s when he passed away, it's like you lose like a future that you thought you might
Mhm.
have. Um,
Mhm.
but you kind of like little steps of that happen along the way, but none of that makes it easier. It's like, did you watch Succession?
Okay, hold
I mean,
on.
also I
So
don't want to
here's the
spoil
deal.
anything for anybody, but
Don't spoil anything for anyone. I am late to the
okay.
succession train. I refused to watch it because I watched one episode and I was like, I feel like I'm just watching Rupert Murdoch's family or Donald Trump's family. And I couldn't get into it because I was like, I can't watch these assholes fight over money like this. Like, I just can't.
Totally.
But then everybody talked about it so much. I started getting so much FOMO. And because of the writer's strike, there's not a lot of new content coming out. I
Sure.
was like, okay, I'm gonna watch it. Start it. So I'm only like season
Okay,
two,
cool.
maybe beginning of season three.
Well, I'm not going to say who says it or what happened or whatever, but it's in response to
Okay.
grief. And one of the characters is like, oh,
Okay.
I'm fine. I pre grieved, and it's this whole thing of
Yes.
like, but that's impossible. You know what I mean? Like, as much
Yes.
as you think you can be fine because you were
Yes.
anticipating some kind of
Yes.
outcome, you know, you can't because then it happens and at some point it hits you. And
Mhm.
I feel like it still hits me. It's like
Mhm.
it's been 3 years since Jason and it's been a year and a half since my mom and when it hits me it still hurts, and it'll
Mhm.
sometimes just like come out of nowhere. Like I'll be
Mhm.
totally fine and
Yeah.
then I'll, hear a song on the radio or I'll see a couple holding hands and it's just like,
Mhm.
you know, then
Yeah.
you're just ugh.
Down for the count.
Yeah. But
You're on a Union 5 at best and
totally.
maybe yeah, it's I've noticed that and I've heard that so much from people who I have watched, you know, really go through their grief, you know, like what's the word I want to say? Like, not vulnerably because it's all vulnerable, but
Yeah.
like that have shown me their grief so just nakedly, like they've been like really upfront
Mhm.
about their grief. Like I've heard that a lot. That it's like it comes out of nowhere. It comes out, like it's
Mhm.
you'll think you're good and then this that. I
Yeah.
love the idea of pre-grieving because that is what anxiety is 100%.
Totally.
It's like a constant like pre or maybe even depression. Like
Yeah.
I am running over the question in my mind recently of like, wait, have I been clinically depressed my whole life or have I suffered from whatever like it feels the same to me.
Yeah.
Like in a way that I don't know if we're even as a society ready to tackle yet. And I don't necessarily have these big markers of things to grieve, but depression feels like grief. So
Mhm.
even if I'm not going through grief, but that's what depression feels like. So people who are grieving are feeling depression. Like even if they might not be clinically depressed, but
Totally.
like there's some like parallel there that I think is
Oh yeah.
for nothing else, just like open it up and like consider that there's some like segue leeway, like I don't know, something there to be thought
Oh
about
yeah.
or considered.
I mean, I
Um,
I am just like naturally an optimistic and like happy person by like that's just like my DNA. You know what I mean? And so like
mhm.
I feel really lucky about that because it helped me go through some really hard times.
Mhm.
I also find humor to be very helpful.
Mhm. Mhm.
Sometimes it gets dark and people
Mhm.
aren't ready for you to like drop a dead mom joke, but listen,
Mhm.
when you have a dead mom, you get to tell dead mom jokes. Like, sorry,
That's what I'm
you know?
saying.
But I hit a really low point in my journey of grief with Jason, and I'm trying to think timeline wise. I feel like it was after it had already been a year. It was after like the year
Mhm.
marker. We weren't able to do like a big memorial for him until
Yep.
far later
Yep.
because of COVID. We did a really small
Mhm.
family thing. And even then I was like, oh, once COVID's over, we're gonna do like the Jason tour. We're gonna do a memorial here, and we're
Mhm.
gonna do, because he has his hometown, I have my hometown, LA is our home. I was like,
Mhm.
we're gonna do are you fucking kidding me? No, I was delusional. Like
Mhm.
it's so exhausting to plan a memorial.
Mhm.
But it is important
Yeah.
to be able to do some kind of thing to like, honor someone and be like, this
Mhm.
happened. You know what I mean? Like, this
Mhm.
person
Yeah.
is not here, but let's celebrate the time that they were, and let's like mark it, and let's all be together so we can laugh and cry and do all the things. But it
Yeah.
was, we weren't able to do like a big memorial until like a year and a half later. So it was after the year mark of Jason passing, maybe like 2 or 3 months after that. And I've been, thank God, I started seeing a therapist before he passed because I knew that
Oh,
things
good.
were not looking good. And to be honest, I should have been seeing a therapist throughout the whole thing. Like that would have been very helpful. We went to a brain tumor
Mhm.
support group that was like amazing. And um,
Oh, good.
but I started seeing an individual therapist. And so she, had been with me through the whole journey and saw my ebbs and flows. And I'm really grateful for that because I did hit a point where she recommended I see a psychiatrist because I was getting to like clinically depressed
Mhm.
levels of
Mhm.
unhappiness. Um,
Yeah.
and that's somebody who I can find the bright side of a lot of different situations, like I'm an optimist, and but
Mhm.
it's still like grief will just do that to you, and it can be debilitating. And I talk about this because I don't want anyone to ever feel like ashamed of that. Like,
Mhm.
it was great that I had the tools to, you know, for somebody to tell me, like, I think you might actually be depressed right now, and maybe you should talk to a
Mhm.
psychiatrist because maybe you need to go on something for a little bit to help you out of this like low.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, grief definitely, for me at least, like can manifest as depression.
Mhm. I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I think that's important to kind of, especially how you frame it as being an optimist. Like, look, if anybody's going to get out of this, like,
Hmm. I
with
got
a smile on my face, it's
it.
me. And I had to like get some help,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I think that's saying quite a lot because I am not an optimist. I am, whatever the opposite of
A
that is, if you
pessimist.
want to say the C word, and there's a couple C words you could use. A pessimist, a cynicist, like all the things. I like to say I'm a realist, but I'm
Hey.
probably more on the other
Well,
side.
hey, that's you being an optimist about being a cynicist, right?
Okay, maybe
Right.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Um, I I like that you talked about a second ago. This is a little bit back, but you talked about with Jason, you guys kind of had to before he even passed, like as you're going through these scenarios, you have like these micro griefs,
Hmm.
right? These little things. And I love that you said that because I think there's so many things in life that people, as we age and
Hmm.
as things happen, these little micro griefs happen. And I don't think people maybe necessarily recognize that that's what that is.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes really hard if you don't allow that space and time and acknowledge and just care towards that
Yeah.
process. And I think a lot of people are just like bulldozing ahead, however they can,
Hmm.
best way they can, but without really I digesting like, hey, this happened to me. I lost my job. I lost my
Hmm.
career. I, lost a friendship or I lost a pet. And pet, I would not say as a micro uh, grief because I know people.
Oh yeah.
Um, Pets are a big deal. I know they are for me. Um, I know they are for a lot of other people. Where it can, some people have even reported like they were more upset over a pet than maybe a certain
Sure.
family member or whatever.
Sure.
It depends on the family member. You never know. But so the micro grief thing is real, and I think if anyone's listening and they're listening, as a person who, oh, well, I don't really have a big grief in my life. I'm just listening because I listen to Great Maybe, or I know Julie, or I know Jillian. Like, I implore you to start investigating where the micro griefs are
Hmm.
and if you're tending to them or not. And
Totally.
and I'm not saying you have to tend to them, but like maybe think
Notice.
about it, acknowledge it, like even just notice it. Yeah. And then if you think you might need to take another step in some direction, I'm like a huge proponent for recovery. This whole podcast is based on recovery. Even the first season, which was about abortion, it wasn't really, I mean, it's about
Hmm.
abortion for sure, but it was also kind of about the recovery of that whole process of me telling my story, getting it out there, and then seeing if anybody else wanted to do that, you
Yeah.
know? And it had a political spin to it for sure because of the time we're in. But to me, that was a recovery season. And then obviously the second season about eating disorder, same
Mhm.
thing, recovery. But grief, same thing, recovery. Like,
Mhm.
not that you ever recover fully from grief. I don't know if that's possible, but like, what if you can't go around it, if you can only go through it,
Mhm.
how do you go through it? Like, and how do you at least get through it or go through it?
Totally.
Um, so I'm hoping that kind of like helps some people if they're looking and want to dig deeper in some of that stuff.
Yeah, in one of our therapists in our brain tumor support group would bring up a lot the concept of ambiguous loss. And I think that's kind of like the same thing. It's like it's these losses that like, somebody dies, that's a very clear loss, but like a loss of a future or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
like those are things that are like harder to sort of like wrap your head around, but are very important. I think a lot of women go through it with like a miscarriage, it's like it's this
Yep.
loss of something, and maybe it was like the very beginning stages of something, but like it is so much bigger than just that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's important to like clock those things so that if you are feeling feelings surrounding it, like you can give yourself permission and you can feel
Mm-hmm.
those things and not judge them.
Yeah. Like, I'm never going to be a gymnast, Julie, like ever.
You should grieve that.
I kind of want to. I'm kind of being serious, and I'm obviously making a probably ill positioned joke, but
No, it's
as you do get older, I'm
mhm.
not saying you can't do anything at any age. Don't come for me. Like, yes, anybody, you can all do whatever you want. But as you get
But
older,
also you
you do
can't.
start to be like,
Mhm.
huh?
I said, but also you can't,
You,
you know?
also, you can't. Like, there are certain things that, like,
Yeah.
you and I are never going to be on the Olympic team. Like,
Totally. Like I'm a
that might have been a
dancer
dream of ours
and
or not.
my leg used to go all the way up to here and it doesn't go as high anymore. And like that
Yes.
hurts sometimes.
It hurts. It hurts physically,
Yes.
emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. And I can break that all down. Like, hurts my ego. It
Totally.
hurts I'm mad at God over it. Like, I can go through all of it.
Yeah.
But it is, and this is the thing, like, as you get older, just there might
Hmm.
be some grief waiting for you over things that you didn't necessarily anticipate.
Totally.
Um, and I think it's valid and important to like acknowledge and work through it.
Yeah, I think so too.
You mentioned, grief comes kind of like little surprises and
Hmm.
things like that. Is there anything else about grief that surprised you that you're like, oh, I didn't? It could be, it
Huh.
could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. It could
Yeah.
be lighthearted. It could be dark. You know.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think for me, like experiencing loss, like also highlighted like the things that I have. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel really lucky that I lost Jason, but I still have his families, like
Mm-hmm.
so many of family and friends, like really like was there for me, and was there for us throughout the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing. And so I think it it highlighted like the community that I have, and
Mm-hmm.
that was like a very positive part about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's just a sneaky little fucker. Like it'll just like come out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's good. Like sometimes it hits me and I get really sad or I cry or whatever. But there's almost a part of me that's like, okay, good, I'm still sad about this. It's
Mm-hmm.
like
Okay.
like I
Yeah.
I think you worry, or I have worried like, that I'll just like move on from things and like life will keep going and Jason will be forgotten or my mom will be forgotten or whatever. And I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it just reminds you like no, like there it's all still there and it all still
Mm-hmm.
matters.
Awesome. I love that. Like, I love to hear that because I think there is this fear when someone's not here
Mhm.
in front of you that like, oh my God, I'm gonna Like, how do I remember? Am I
Mhm.
losing the memory of like, can I still remember their laugh? Can I still
Mhm.
remember like some of those
Yeah,
things? You're like, oh God, am I losing it? Like
totally.
what? And then sometimes you get hit with a memory that you don't even remember. You're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, like that memory.
Yeah,
Okay. Kind of didn't even think about that. That one's been way in the back for who knows how
totally.
long.
Very recently, like, just my mom's voice popped in my head of her just being like, "Hi, Jules." Like, the way in which she
Oh,
would say it, like, if I
right.
called her or something like that, and it was just, like, out of
Yeah.
nowhere. I don't even remember, like, what, like, sparked it or whatever, and it was just, like, it gave me all the feels, it's like, for a
Yeah.
second, you feel like she's there, and then you remember that she's not. That happens a
Right.
lot when I get in the car because I would talk to my
Mm,
mom a lot in the car, like I would call her or whatever. And so it's
right.
like that little urge is still there. Like I still will
Mm-hmm.
get in the car and just be like, oh no, I can't. And it makes
Mm-hmm.
me really sad, but it also makes me happy that I'm still wanting to do that. You know,
Yeah.
it's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have
That makes
that like
sense.
with your dad at all or
My dad and I had a complicated relationship. So some of it, yeah, like I had a memory about him the other day that I was like, oh man, I haven't thought about that in a long time.
Mhm.
Like that was one of the good memories that I didn't remember until now.
Mhm.
And I thought I kind of had most of them, you know,
Yeah.
there. Um, but I don't have a ton of surprise about grief. I was surprised at my ability to deal with the last kind of arranging
Mhm.
of my dad. Um, and I don't know, I'm going to throw that as a pro to anticipatory grief. Like, even though we said it doesn't help, I do want to go ahead and say that I do think that that part might have
Mhm.
helped me for that
Totally.
scenario. Of course, it doesn't make you flawless in the process. It doesn't make it, you know, feeling free or,
Mhm.
like amazing. But there were a lot of things that I felt like I was able to assist with that I didn't think I would really be able to.
Yeah.
So I was surprised by that. I was surprised that I wasn't necessarily lashing out on people as much as I thought I would have. That's my surprise, everybody. I thought I was going to be more of a raging bitch than I actually was.
Well,
But I
look at
still was.
you.
Like, let me tell you, there were certain people that still got it.
Well, hey, if you
Um,
lost all your bitchiness, you wouldn't be you.
see. This is what I'm saying. This is what I see. This is why everybody likes you, Julie. This is why everybody likes you. Okay, now you mentioned that this brain tumor support group having, a
Mhm.
psychologist, having a
Yeah.
psychiatrist as well. And I'm going to get that if that brain tumor support group is open to the public, I'd love to link up to
Oh,
it in
yeah.
the show notes after
Absolutely.
the show. I'll make sure I get that from you and or if you remember the name of it, you want to
Yeah.
throw it out.
Yeah, it's called Cancer Support Community, and they have other cancer specific ones. So the brain tumor one was very unique in that because it affects like your brain, obviously. The thing that
Right.
helps you like think and do things. Caregivers and patients came to the group together, and then
Hmm.
we'd do like an hour together, and then we'd go into breakout groups where patients and caregivers could have their own spaces. And that, I mean,
Amazing.
I have a close friend that I met in the group. We actually met his wife. He came one time, but his wife was a regular in the group, and the four of us became close, and that was amazing. In that, you know, they were able to help me through my loss with Jason, and then when she ended up passing away, like I was able to be there for him, and
Mm,
just to have that kind of support for each other was, has been
right.
amazing.
Good. I'm going to put that in the show notes. And I just want to put a pitch out there to anybody. If you're a caretaker on any level, please, if you haven't already, find some kind of a
Hmm.
support group or some kind of support for yourself. It is so, so important for people who are caretaking, people who are ill
Hmm.
in their life to have that as a resource. And also, I want to pitch anytime you're going through something, find your people.
Mhm.
Like you have got to
Yes.
find your people that are going through the same thing, because otherwise you go through it in a vacuum. And I'm not even like, I'm the biggest proponent of have a therapist. Yes, great, yes. But also you need to have your people.
Yeah.
And it's not your people like your friends and your family. Yes, those people too. But your people who are going through the same situation that you are, because a certain there's a certain need that gets fulfilled
Hmm.
from people who have gone through it or are going through it, that other people who are your support system in life may not be able to kind of give you that same support. So I want to throw out that pitch to anybody who's might be listening and is a caretaker, or, is going through something, anything. Find your support, find those groups, find those things. Um, so I'm gonna ask you two, like it's a multi question. Like
Okay.
I want to know if there's something you can think of. Like you did talk about uh the the support group
Hmm.
and the psychologist and the psychiatrist. Like the other side of that question is what didn't help? Like what didn't help? Like
um,
because this question is born out of people saying the wrong thing, which I often am. I am
um,
often the person who says the wrong fucking
well,
thing.
what's funny? Like, first, so many things are coming into my head right now. There's no right thing to say. I'll preface with that. Like, everybody's like,
I feel left off the hook.
I just want to be
Okay, good.
like, everyone's like, I don't know what to say. I just want to say the right thing or whatever. There's like, there's no right thing.
Mhm.
There are some wrong things, but I feel like it's very, like it's very personal to people. Like when you mentioned pets, right? Like it did not help me when someone was like, "Well, I lost my dog," and I just wanted to be like, "Were you
Right.
married to your fucking dog? Like, did you,
Yes,
was your dog your
exactly.
life partner?" Like, no.
Yes.
However, I know that losing a pet is a huge loss, and I'm not downplaying any of that.
Right. Right.
Also losing your spouse is not the same as losing your grandparent. Like, again,
Right.
like, and and I don't mean this in a way like don't try to use your losses to connect with somebody because that's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Um, just be delicate with the way in which maybe compare losses because
Right. Right.
it's not a comparison game in like my loss is bigger than your loss or whatever,
Right.
but just be very delicate in the ways in which I don't know. For me, at least, that was something that like I could see that somebody was trying to connect with me, but also
Yeah.
it was like, like where you're
Yeah.
just like,
It's not helpful.
okay,
Not
cool,
helpful.
thank you.
And I think unfortunately people they want to relate so
Yes,
bad, right? They want
yes,
to let people know that like I get it. I get sadness. Like I feel
totally.
bad too, and this is why. But instead of just being like, dude, that sucks. Like that is
Yeah,
shitty.
and
And then just
I mean, sure, if you've experienced losses, like of course bring those up. But you could also then like put a little disclaimer on the end and say, I know this isn't the same as what you're going through,
right.
instead of
Right.
the person having to put their own disclaimer on it for you.
Right. Right.
But also, also somebody that has experienced a major loss, it doesn't mean that your losses, like other person who hasn't experienced that, don't matter. Because I also, on the
Mhm.
flip side of it, had people being like, oh, well, I didn't want to bring that up because you just lost Jason.
Right.
And so this or whatever. And it's like,
Right.
no, but we all still have big losses happening in our
Right.
lives. And if anything, sometimes, talking about somebody else's helps you just like escape your own, and
Listen, misery loves company, and the last person I want to talk to when I'm miserable is someone who's doing really well. I gotta say, so like, if you're having a hard time, don't keep that from someone else who's having a hard time.
yeah, be there for each other, But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, I totally get it, and I would agree with you 100%. All of those things. I am gonna attach. I found a little do's and don'ts of like things to
Oh,
say or
cool.
not say. When
Hmm.
someone's grieving, and uh, I think that's like a specific thing, like you brought up of how and then there's some other ones too in there that I think are subtle and good to remind people that like don't play the at least game. Well, at least, like don't like just let no. Like that's on the don'ts. So at the end of this podcast, I'm going to read it and then I'm going to put it on every episode as a link.
Yeah,
It'll be
totally.
there as a link on every episode for you to look if you know you're going to be seeing someone, talking to someone, or you have someone close to you dealing with grief and you don't know how to talk to them, or you at least figure out what not to say. And
Yeah.
then you can,
Yeah.
there's some do's on there too. But, um, oh, I have a quick
Oh
question. This is
yeah.
like not on the question
Oh,
sheet. This is not
give
on
it
the
to
question
me.
sheet. I just want to see if you, I'm going to ask everybody this. I have a theory that your people pleasing is directly not you, but just like in
Oh,
general.
I am.
Someone's people pleasing. I'm a recovering people pleaser. Uh, someone's people pleasing, I think, is directly correlated to how honest they will be when someone asks you, "How you doing?" Because, and I'll tell you what this is. So when people say to me, like, my dad died, and they're like, "So how you
Uh-huh.
doing?" I'd be like, I'd look at them, and I could tell how badly they wanted me to be okay.
Uh-huh.
And then I would say, I'm doing good. I'm
Uh-huh.
going to lie to you right
Yeah.
now because I can tell how badly you want me to be okay
Sure.
because you're worried. And I get it. But I can't tell you honestly right now because I don't know if you can handle it or like you don't
Yeah.
seem like. And I know this is no one's fault. I'm just talking about noticing my own people pleasing that in this
Mm-hmm.
moment, instead of being honest, I'm like, they want me to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm doing good.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if you relate to that. And
Totally.
on the level of people pleasing, 10 being lying to someone who's asking you about your grief, and one being like, no, I'll break down right here, right now, and tell you exactly how I feel. Where do you think you are on
Oh
that?
my gosh. I mean, it depends on the day and who I'm talking to. And
And yes,
I
always.
am a people pleaser. Like it brings me joy to make other people happy. So like it's deeply ingrained. But it is something that I'm working on just even in my daily life. Like you go to the grocery store and you run into someone and they're like, "Oh, how you doing?" Like in past Julie would just always like no matter what, the answer is I'm good, whatever. And now I've at least started to be like, I'm okay, or like, give levels when I know that I'm not like great, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there is always that calculation when you're experiencing grief, or even if you're not, like you read the person and you're like, what do you, like, how much do we want to go there right now? And like, what
Right.
can you handle? And what do I want to get into? Because sometimes I say I'm good to like make the other person feel better, but sometimes it's because I don't want to talk about it. So if I just tell you that I'm
Yes.
good, then we can like
Yes.
cut to the next thing and,
Yes.
you know, um, but I feel like as somebody that has experienced loss and then when when Jason was alive, um, that you know what I mean when I say that. I'm like,
Yes.
I make jokes and
Yes.
whatever, but we would go to a party and you're meeting people for the first time, and then he would always be like, I would always like really hope people wouldn't ask like, oh, so what do you do for a living? Because I felt like then it would just like all of a sudden now you inevitably get into the brain cancer diagnosis or like I don't know. Him and I both it's like somebody asks you about your husband or your partner or whatever, and it's like, what, how much can you handle right now? Like, because
Mm-hmm.
I can handle being like, oh, well, my husband has brain cancer and blah, 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 but it's okay. Like, we're still doing this and that or whatever. But then you're dropping a bomb on somebody. And I do that.
Right.
Like, then after he passed, it's like, oh, now I have the widow bomb. You know what I mean? When somebody's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, so you married? And you're like, widowed.
Yeah.
It's like they
Yeah.
did not expect that out of this package, right? And
Yes,
so
no. And if you're not able to see or know what Julie looks like, she is not what you would imagine a widow. I don't know what a widow looks
no,
like.
I
I
mean,
don't know what that, but I guarantee you it's not her.
it
Okay?
what
Whatever you're imagining, it's
you
not
just
her.
think somebody older, like, or
Yes.
whatever. And so like sometimes in those like how are you doing kind of moments, it's like calculating like what kind of a bomb do I want to drop on this person right now? And
Mhm.
you know, sometimes it's yeah, it is caretaking the other person and being like, what do they need?
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for
This is what I'm
sure.
saying.
Like
I was like, "Oh, that's one of the interesting things I've noticed is like is that whole thing is who like, how you doing?" And I
yeah.
literally will look and the same thing. As like I don't want to think I don't want to
Yeah.
talk about it. I don't want to get into it. Like I'm good.
Mhm.
I'm great. Like there is those moments and I am trying more and more to be like, and I do think I do this much more now is when people are like, how you doing? I'm like,
Mhm.
or I do this one. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Like
Ugh.
which everybody knows that that is.
Yeah.
Even in a text, I'll do it in all caps. I'm fine, which means like everything's like my basic needs, things are fine.
Yeah.
But like,
But maybe
like
I'm
I'm
not
not
okay.
super pumped and happy. I'm
Hmm.
not joyous. I'm not, like I'm having a moment,
Yeah.
whatever. But I'm so glad to hear that you do that too, because I was like, oh my God, am I this much of a people pleaser? Do I really not want to tell people because I can tell they want me to be okay and like
Totally.
I'd rather them feel better in this moment. But I can't imagine like going to a party like
Hmm.
where the epitome of what's that called? Busy talk. What's that called?
Small
Like
talk?
surface
Yeah.
talk? Small talk. Yes. Oh my God. Just
I like
hello. I'm
circus
from
talk
Minnesota. Why
better.
can't I think of this? So, surface talk. That's what it is to me. It's just like it's just on this
Yeah.
like it just doesn't permeate anything.
Hmm.
Like I can't imagine going to like the most surface of small talk and then being like having to be honest because like what are you gonna
Yeah.
say, like you're gonna lie, you can't
Totally.
avoid it. Eventually people ask enough questions and then you drop that and then people,
Oh
the
yeah.
small talkers, right,
Yeah.
the small talkers are just like holy shit, now what? And
Yeah.
you're just like, see, this
They
is why I don't
they
want to go
don't
to parties
they
anymore.
don't know what to do with it.
You're like, because now I feel bad for them and I have to like cheerlead to like, no, no, no,
It's
it's so
okay.
good,
Like,
like,
yeah.
but like you don't have that kind of energy, come on, like, you know
Yeah. It's but then
I mean
like
you might, but
sometimes like when you don't drop the bomb, then you feel like you're lying. You know what I
right,
mean?
or you're withholding.
Yeah, like I have this big secret that you
Sneaky.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. It's an equation. It's like just calculating all the little things. Like, do I want to talk about this? Do I not? Like, can they handle it? Can they not? Like where are we? What's the vibe? Like,
Hmm.
yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, and that makes me not
Yeah.
so feel so
Oh
weird.
no, but I'm working on my people pleasing skills as well. So
Okay,
we
good,
can be there together.
good. I like your answer. Okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Like that higher. It's like
Right?
I'm okay, but like I'm not great. Okay, but
Totally.
like I'm okay, but I'm up here in this
Uh-huh.
high
I'm trying.
register, so I'm still contemplating. I'm figuring. I'm trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of the it says a lot. It says a lot in one word.
Yeah.
Do you have like, is there like a belief system or any kind of a spirituality that helps, or maybe you have one post him
Mhm.
passing? And also this can be interchangeable with like, hey, you got any spooky stories you want to talk about? Anything mystical, magical,
Yeah.
like anything that kind of happened that you want to discuss? Because I'm finding that that's kind of a through line in everyone I talk to. There's some kind of spooky, but
Mhm.
not in a bad way, that
Totally.
happens. It can be ongoing or can happen like in that moment.
Yeah.
What you got? What you
Yeah, what
got?
I got. I don't know. I mean, I don't have any like overarching, belief system. I meditate every morning and that has really helped like ground me. I believe in like a larger God, universe, creator, however you want to express that, like I believe there's something bigger than us all. Um, but I do think that like when people die, like they don't fully leave, you know? I mean, they're just like, if somebody impacted you, like you are you because of them. You know what I mean? There are little
Mhm.
isms in you that are derived from those people. Like I can feel when I say something like my mom, and it's like,
Mhm.
in a way,
Right.
it's like, ooh, she's still there, because it's like
Right.
moving through me you know, um, or when I think of like how Jason would have responded to a question, like at the top of this, where he would have been like, "Can you stop setting the bar so high? Because now they're gonna go, and it's not gonna be as great." Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, there's definitely been some really like fun divine intervention type things. Like I got COVID like in January of 2021. So this is like pre-vaccine. It's still like pretty gnarly, case of everything.
Mhm.
I was doing all the like right things, and it
Mhm.
came through my vents like in my apartment.
Ugh.
And that was just the moment where I was like, I need to fucking get out of this apartment. It hadn't been a full year since Jason passed, and right after he passed, it was really nice to be there because it was like
Right.
comforting and it was like our stuff,
Mhm.
and I don't know. It just, I wasn't ready to leave. But like that was
Mhm.
sort of the moment where I was like, okay, Jason was sick here for so long. Now I'm sick here,
Mhm.
for this like
Mhm.
tiny period of time.
Yeah.
And I just need to get out of here. And I was house sitting for a friend. I was looking for something in my email, and I accidentally found this email exchange between Jason and I. And it was about when we had first moved into our apartment. And
Mm-hmm.
I was mad because I didn't turn in our applications right away. And so we got like the shittier of the two units. Like when I got the
Mm.
keys to our unit, because we were still long distance when I got this place. So it's like I walked in and I was like, this was not the one I looked at, and it has a bad view, and it
Mm-hmm.
has, and I was really upset.
Yeah.
And so I wrote him an email, and I was just like, I'm just so mad. If I just turned those in right away, like we would have had the better thing. And he was like, listen, it's okay. Like we're not going to be there forever. Fast forward like
Mm-hmm.
10 years later, like I'm still there. But
Uh-huh.
it was,
Yeah.
it was like such a reminder of like, hey, we never intended on staying in this place. Like it was almost like
Right. Right.
permission to leave.
Right. You needed that probably
Yeah.
the last little bit to like
Yeah. To
the COVID was like this is becoming intolerant to me, but
totally.
like that last little part of you
Yeah.
of like that
That
loyalty
like
of like not leaving.
Yeah, of just like him reminding me, because I completely accidentally stumbled upon this email. I was not looking for it. And it very much felt like his way of being like, "Hey, but also like turn in your application right away." You know?
Right.
And like
Right.
a couple weeks later, like I had been searching for apartments, and this unit popped up, and it was like right around the corner from the farmers market, which we would go to
Mm-hmm.
every week. It was like our church, and we
Mm-hmm.
always wanted to live in that neighborhood, and talked about it, and it's like this beautiful apartment in this like cute little building that had been, my unit had been renovated, pops up, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to go see this. And so I went right
Mm-hmm.
away. I like walked in, and I just like felt like I need I need to live here.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so with that little nugget in my head of like turn in your thing right away, Julie, I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it totally felt like it was like, Jason,
Arranged for
yeah.
you.
And it turns
Yeah.
out the guy that used to live in my unit, he lived there for 40 years and he passed away in the unit. And they
Mm.
have to disclose that to you at a certain point. Like
Right.
I turned in my application literally the next morning. The landlord was like, "Cool, like, can I see your bank statements?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is happening like already? Like this is so
Mm-hmm.
fast." And then after a couple exchanges, he was like, "So we do have to let you know, like the former tenant passed away, like natural causes. He was old." And I had one moment where I was like, is this supposed to be my red flag? And then I was like,
Right.
no, like I am the perfect person to move
Yeah.
into this space. Like even in my email
Yeah.
when I sent over my application, I said, my husband recently passed away and I'm just looking for a
Mm-hmm.
inspiring new space to live in. And it
Mm-hmm.
totally felt like Jason planting all these seeds and
Right.
like, I don't know, making it
I
happen.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Um, I have a couple last questions for you.
Yeah.
Not a ton. We're getting towards the end. Um, these you might have kind of already covered this, but I'm just gonna ask, like, is there something that, like, looking back now,
hmm
what did you need from other people when it was the hardest? Like, was there something that people could have done more of or do
hmm
period? Or, like what, if you can think back to when it was the hardest or
Yeah.
when it gets really hard,
Yeah.
because this can be ongoing and, like what did you need from other people?
I think for me, it's like it's overwhelming when the loss first happens, right? Like
Right.
consult with somebody before you send flowers because my house turned into a funeral home. Like I am so
Yeah.
grateful for like all the flowers I received. They were beautiful, but like at a certain point one can only have so many flowers, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but um, you get such like an outpouring of love and support in the first even few months or whatever. And then
Right.
life goes on, like people's lives go back to normal and yours doesn't. And
Hmm.
I think for me, like I've had so many people continue to reach out, but I think, sometimes I'll even fall into this where it's like something happened to somebody and I'm like, oh, I don't want to reach out right away because they're probably like overwhelmed.
Inundated. Yep.
Like just if you ever have the inkling to reach out to anybody, even if it is right away, my advice, and this might not go for everyone, but like reach out because it is overwhelming, but also like you can then choose to like respond to those people in your own time. But it
Right.
is nice to
Right.
see like how many people really care. And then I would just say,
Mhm.
like, check in, like, because once the
Mhm.
dust settles, that's like the hardest part
Yes.
is like,
That's what I've heard.
yeah. And so just like checking in with people, at any point in time, like months, years,
Mhm.
whatever. I've tried to make a better habit of like when somebody just pops in my head for whatever reason, just like reaching out to
Mhm.
them and saying hi because
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's like it feels like there's a reason why people pop into our brains.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And I think too, there's like people, they sometimes people want to reach out and they might be aware that those people might be get inundated
Mhm.
and then they don't reach out. And then a lot of people do that. So then you
Mhm.
don't even
Sure,
like, so then
yeah.
like there could be this
Yeah.
situation where like no one's really reaching out or only a couple people
Yeah.
are reaching out when there is a lot more people that want to, but
Totally.
they're like, kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to do it yet because they're probably getting it. Just so I think I agree with you. Like,
Yeah.
especially if you don't expect anything back in return, like even an acknowledgement, even if someone just like, hey, I just want to let you know you don't have to get back to me. You don't have to even
Yeah.
respond. I just want you to know, like I think that's always like really
Yeah.
nice to like let the person off the hook too, to accept the love without having to like do anything.
Totally. And then
Yeah.
also like, so many people, I would see them for the first time or whatever, and maybe it had been a long time since I'd seen them, and you could tell people would like want to bring it up, but wouldn't want to,
Hmm.
So I would just encourage people to like, and again, this is so personal to everybody, so like, there's no one size fits all, but like,
Hmm.
I think for me, it's like okay to bring it up and just be like, I just wanted to say I'm so sorry about Jason or whatever, because
Hmm.
I like when people remember that he's gone or remember that my mom's gone.
Hmm.
It's like
Right.
it's comforting to me to know that like that he is missed or my mom is missed or
Right.
whatever. And then sometimes it just like it gets that awkwardness that everybody maybe is already feeling or like or even like sometimes I'll be like, well, I don't know if you know, but my mom died and blah blah blah. Like I'll bring it up because I just feel like I need to like I don't know,
Yeah.
bring it up.
Well, yeah, because you're like not like when you're kind of still like on any given day, you could be processing stuff, and
Yeah.
like if people don't know, and you might not be your full self or how you
Yeah.
think they normally perceive you, it is kind of like you just want to be like, hey, yeah, like so this happened.
Yeah.
That's what's new with me.
Yeah,
Like,
totally. Like,
hey, hey, what's new with you? What you
yeah,
working on? Oh,
totally.
well, my dad died.
Yeah.
Like, so I was kind of working on that. I guess doing that stuff. So yeah, there's like I totally understand that. I think there's, and I feel like this is also gonna, this is definitely a theme when I talk to people is like there is this sidestepping of like I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to hurt someone
Mhm.
more than they're already hurting,
Right.
but then not bringing it up sometimes is like not helpful because
Totally.
it's like avoiding
Uh-huh.
elephant in the room, not honoring the person,
Yeah.
acting like you're forgetting them. And that's equally
It
kind of, and this is what I'm talking about, this weird tiptoeing shit that we do
totally.
because nobody knows how to deal with it. We don't, uh, I feel like as a society, we don't accept our own mortality. We don't
Yeah.
accept it from people around us. Growing up in Minnesota,
Mhm.
like
Oh,
when
yeah.
people talk about stuff, they're very much like, well, heaven forbid this should happen to you. And it's like, well, but it
It's
is
going
all
to.
going to
We're all
happen to
gonna
everybody.
die.
And there is like, don't say that. Oh, you'll never guess who passed away. And it's like, I mean,
Maybe I will. I don't know.
maybe because everybody, like,
Yeah.
so there is like this very, there are other cultures that like, they do better in this
Totally.
area. I think I don't know what they are. Maybe I should do some research on that. But I think like we have a little room for improvement
Absolutely.
in that. And I think this like tiptoeing, like even acknowledging it, talking about it, like everybody being like, yeah, that happens too. And like feeling like grief is airborne. Like people
Yeah.
are almost afraid of it. Like
Totally.
they start avoiding. I notice I do it. I'll be like, I I don't want any more. I can't take any more sadness.
You're
Like
right.
I'm already a sad person. Like I can't take it. Or like I don't want to bring it up. Like, oh, it's airborne. Like, it could be
Right.
like contagious, like that kind of thing. And so and that might just be me, but I've noticed that a bit as well. That's the best way I can describe it, is like being afraid is airborne, or like I'm going to catch it,
Yeah.
like because the anxiety it brings up for people and the sadness and the empathy that they might have is like they can't tolerate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I got one more question for you.
What you got?
What I always say, at the end of all the podcasts, I don't give advice. I don't encourage my guests to give advice, but I do ask for their suggestion.
Sure.
So, do you have a suggestion for people who might be suffering right now? Even if you've already said it, what again? Like, what's your suggestion if you have one for people who might be suffering right now?
I mean, honestly, I think like reach out and talk to somebody like that you can trust, you know, because I think the more that we like suffer in isolation, the harder it becomes. And the more that I've shared my experiences, the more I've seen that other people, have similar feelings in similar ways. It's just like it is a relatable thing. Like we do all have grief in our lives and we've all grieved and while it's good to, try to work things out for yourself sometimes, and like self-soothe and figure, like go internal and not mask things with other things. I think at a certain point, like you don't have to suffer alone. You shouldn't have to suffer alone, and it's really important to like to reach out, even if you're not the kind of person that likes to reach out. Like it's just however you can figure, even if it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, do you want to go for a walk? Or, like you don't even have to
Mm-hmm.
talk about the thing you're suffering with, but like try not to lose like the human connection because I think that's the thing that can like really help us through. And it allows other people to help you. And at the end of the day, like sometimes that's a gift for that other person.
Absolutely. I
So,
love that. Um, And I'm going to say one thing that I
yeah.
didn't say at the beginning that I wanted to say is that one of the things about you that has impressed me since the beginning. I mean, obviously, fantastic dancer, like very smart dancer. Like there are great dancers and then there's smart dancers as well, and fun dancers to work with. You are all those categories and boxes, but I still can't quite wrap my head around how you took and had a professional dance career. Like, I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you showed up for that. I don't know because I don't think of people like a lot of people who listen to this podcast like might be dancers, but if you are not, I don't think anybody realizes how hard it is to
Hmm.
have a career in dance, especially when you've moved from someplace else. You're not a native, Angelino
Hmm.
or a native New York City person who grew up with that culture and grew up with the industry kind of like right around you. It is such a difficult profession. It is so you have to have so much energy and focus to put towards it to make it successful. I have no idea how you were caretaking and doing that. Like I just don't know. Like physically, I don't know. Emotionally, I don't know. Like mentally, spiritually, all of the boxes. Like I don't know how you did it, but you did,
Oh,
and you
you're very
continue to,
sweet.
and you still do. And I'm like, okay,
Well,
I don't know how many lifetimes it would take me to like personally.
I mean, I sometimes it felt really petty to like, lay on the couch and cry about a bad audition to Jason, who is, undergoing cancer treatment. But he always gave me the space to have those feelings too. So I feel
Right.
like I was able to do that because I had somebody, supporting me too.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I'm still trying to do it. I don't know. How do you do it? How can
I
how can we
I
keep doing it?
I don't know. I don't know, girl. I don't know.
Ugh.
Julie Schmid, thank you so,
Oh,
so, so, so
oh,
much for coming on and talking about the hard stuff and being willing to like really let it all out there. This is like not a walk in the park as far as, an interview, and I so appreciate your grace and your willingness to come
oh
on.
my God. Thank you for having me. I think the world of you and I love chatting with you anytime, but anything.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
I can't say enough good things about my experiences with Julie. Her personality, professionalism, humor, work ethic, and of course, all of her many talents. Her greatness only makes the circumstances she's endured so much harder to contend with because bad things shouldn't happen to good people. Watching people we love suffer and the feelings that come up in ourselves through the process of empathy is torture. The feeling of powerlessness is not one anyone enjoys, nor do we as a culture explore or accept it. I'm so honored and humbled that Julie would take the time to share her experience and journey with me. If you're listening to this episode and you're experiencing grief, welcome, and I hope this helps your journey. You're not alone. Just a reminder for anyone who needs to hear it, you don't need to have experienced a giant catastrophic event or a death to experience grief. Know that whatever you're feeling, there are those among us who have probably felt it too. You're not alone. If you're listening and you have someone you love in your life that is grieving, welcome. You are also not alone. We as a society have a long way to go in being able to tolerate and help those closest to us manage grief. I've included a link in the show notes for the do's and don'ts, which I'm going to read here. Don't assign positive meaning to their loss. In our effort to encourage and support the griever, we may try to project the current situation into a better future way too soon. Saying, "Time will heal all things," is not helpful. Prophesizing a future positive meaning on top of the grieving person's crushing and devastating loss tends to minimize the griever's current agony, essentially suggesting that they sweep their pain under the rug while focusing on some potential positive long-term outcome. Stay in the moment with the griever. Follow the grieving person's lead. Be an attentive, active listener. Allow the griever to take the conversation where it needs to go. Make room for plenty of silence. Don't jump in to fill space with unnecessary commentary. Sometimes before a two-way conversation can even begin, the griever just wants someone to sit with, literally or virtually. No questions or words of comfort are needed to fill silence. Presence is often what the griever really needs. On their own, sometimes the grieving person will identify a silver lining or hopeful thought that adds meaning to their loss. This is a normal and often constructive way to cope with grief. Remember, the griever is the only person who can know what this loss means to them. Only the griever can make meaning of their experience. Once they do so, it's appropriate to support them in their newfound hope. Use the name of the lost loved one. While you are comforting the griever, all of their emotions are tied up in the loss of their beloved. Saying their loved one's name out loud is a way of validating the life of that person. Say Anne, not your sister. Say Alan, not your son. Say Stu, not your husband. Don't ever be afraid to mention the person lost. Grievers want to talk. Memories are all that remain after a loss, and talking about the person who died helps to keep them alive in broken hearts. Refrain from platitudes. Refrain from platitudes, religious or otherwise, like, "They are in a better place," or "Time heals all things," or "Everything happens for a reason." Don't pretend that you know the answer. You don't. No one does. As a person who desires to support a griever, pay attention to what you say. Never say anything that starts with the phrase, "at least." Comparing and contrasting your own grief experiences or dreamed up hypothetical ones with the reality of the loss that just happened is missing the mark in several ways. Making your loss the topic of conversation is asking the grieving person to switch their focus and empathize with your grief at a time when the total focus should be on them. Don't say, "I know how you feel." You don't. Seems to me describing how something worse could have happened represents a thwarted attempt to say something, no matter how unhelpful. Stay out of your empty word, ill-informed autopilot script. Choose not to go there. Be open to the expression of any emotion. As an active listener, be open to any emotions the griever may express through verbal or nonverbal means. Anger, yelling, silence, rage, disbelief, denial, crying, pacing around the room, shouting, rocking back and forth, wringing hands, clenched fists, avoiding eye contact, needing to be held, avoiding touch, etc. Be observant about what the griever is expressing, overt or subtle, and allow a safe space to be in that moment. Do not in any way tell them not to feel what they are feeling. Remember anniversaries. Try to remember anniversaries such as the birthday of the person who died and the anniversary of the date of their death. Sending a card or a text will let the griever know that you are remembering too, reminding them that they are not alone. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you were able to find something relatable in today's episode. If you'd like to show your support for this podcast, consider making a donation on Spotify. It would also be very helpful if you could rate, share, comment, and subscribe. If you'd like to contact the podcast, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com, graymaybestories@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone who helped make this Gray Maybe podcast happen. Producer and editor, Roderick Barge. Cover photo by Jose Perez. Music licensed by Pixabay. Special counsel, Jada Ellingham and Roderick Barge. Special shout out to supporter, Patty Olgan. Until next time, bye for now.